at the areas where Naxal domination is there in Chhattisgarh, in those areas, and this is where the story really is, the Congress is picking up 29 seats, that's a gain 24. Of 9, 24 seats, that's a gain of 9, the BJP at 15, that's a loss of 9, and I want to introduce at this time Rajiv Pratap Rudy from the BJP and Sanjay Jha also with us. Mr. Rudy, we will talk about the BJP victories in a moment, but Chhattisgarh giving the BJP some trouble. You would have wanted this to be a 4-0 scoreline from your perspective, but that's not happening at all, Mr. Rudy. 3-1 it seems to be.
Well, overall what we see is there is a landslide victory in Madhya Pradesh, there is a landslide victory in Rajasthan, and we are in a position to form a government in Delhi. Chhattisgarh, we shall await for the final outcome, but we did know that post the Maoist violence in the Bastar region, there were some problems for the BJP. It's nothing new to us. Those within the party are absolutely aware of it. But having said that, we think at the end of the day, when the final results are declared, BJP should be able to form a government there. And but these elections does reflect the mood of the nation, and that is exactly what we had been trying to gauge, and this has been reflected in the outcome of the results in all those 4 state elections.
No, but the Congress is arguing, sir, that the Chhattisgarh results reflect that there is no pan-India anti-Congress mood, as it were. These are localized elections. Congress spokespersons have been saying won and fought on local, statewide issues, and Chhattisgarh more than anything else reflects that you can't say that there's a pan-India anti-Congress wave.
Well, it depends on how you interpret everything. Today, Congress losing Rajasthan, and there is a landslide victory there for the BJP. Madhya Pradesh, we have been able to retain. Delhi, we shall be able to swing it out from the Congress and take it to ourselves. And Chhattisgarh, there are certain problems which possibly locally, because of this Maoist violence which took place there, there were certain ramifications in the system, in the society there. And but we shall wait for the final outcome, and we are not saying pan-India or anything like that. What we are saying that the general mood of the nation is against the Congress party. There is a general mood in favor of Narendra Modi, and Narendra Modi, who was there here in the campaign, added on to the effort of the state elections. It was not a campaign manifested by him and that he wanted.
No, if there were a wave in favor of Modi, then what explains Chhattisgarh, Mr. Rudy? If there is such a big wave in favor of Modi, then how do you explain the Chhattisgarh numbers?
We are talking about the nation, and we never said that Narendra Modi at least I, as far as the party is concerned, officially we have never said that all these state elections are to be fought by Mr. Narendra Modi, and the states have no role to play. Where we had an established leadership, Mr. Modi's effort did add on to their working. If possibly for some reasons the state leadership could not enhance that majority or that support, this is a matter which we will look into. But overall the scenario is in favor of the BJP, and there is a nation's mood, the national mood does get reflected in the outcome of the 4 elections.
Rajasthan. In Rajasthan, you're down to your lowest tally ever. Look at Delhi. You're at 8 seats, just 8 seats for the Congress in Delhi. This could potentially reflect. Both Shiv Vishwanathan and Veer Sanghvi have said this, that if this trend holds in the general elections, the BJP could get a simple majority of its own. Mr. Jha.
Rahul, while we accept the verdict and we are disappointed with it, but end of day, I think there are learnings for the Congress party. Let me qualify that statement. I mean, you have 3 elections of the past, 2008, 2003 and 1998, where you have seen that the state assembly elections held in almost the same number of states hasn't really resulted in any similar impact at the general elections that have followed in less than 6 months after that. So for anyone to try and make some kind of a quick cursory reading and extrapolate that into some kind of a national mood, I think they can do so at their own peril. We encourage them to do that. That's for the BJP. They can walk into that what I call as a fool's paradise. But the big point here is, and I believe that's something that we cannot ignore, is that there has been a lot of talk about over the last several months about the fact that Modi has become a certain force in national politics. And I'll give you an example here. not just in Chhattisgarh, which I'll wait for the final results, but at least from your screen is clear that we ought to form the government if the results hold. But let's wait for the final outcome to emerge. That we won in Karnataka, where Modi was a very, very active campaigner, by the way, in the cities. And, you know, Bangalore is a typical profile of a young, emerging India, you know, more, you know, technology-friendly, upper middle class and middle class, etc. We have also beaten, actually, the BJP in the north, in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. So since we are talking pan-India, if you look at Chhattisgarh in central, the north in Himachal and Uttarakhand, Karnataka in the south, you can, you know, what has to be appreciated that the Congress remains the true, genuine pan-India player. Now, there's a lot of criticism I'm hearing about, you know, us being traditional, criticism against Rahul Gandhi. We expected that, you know, end of day people will say, you know, how is Rahul Gandhi really pulling off the campaigns? But why are we ignoring that he's been part of two very, very critical general elections where he was a campaigner right from the very beginning?
But there's a big difference, Sanjay. There's a massive difference between the role. There's a massive difference in the role that Rahul Gandhi played in last elections and now. I want Mr. Rudy to come in on the issue of Rahul Gandhi, because the Congress is saying that you can't blame Rahul Gandhi for what's happened in Delhi. This is about Sheila Dikshit, this is about onion prices, and this has got nothing to do with Rahul Gandhi. And similarly, if Rahul Gandhi was such a turnoff for voters, they wouldn't be winning in Chhattisgarh. How do you respond to the Congress's defense of Rahul Gandhi?
Well, I will, there is absolutely, it only figures out when most of my colleagues on the media or from the Congress take the reference of Narendra Modi as a reference to these 4 elections. We have always said that Mr. Modi worked to add on to what was already being worked out by the states, and they have their own independence, and we work collectively. But when it comes, definitely the national situation did affect the state assembly elections, and I think that was visible in Rajasthan, that was visible in Delhi to a very great extent, that was visible in Madhya Pradesh. And of course, there is something which happened in Chhattisgarh. It was not about local governance. There was an issue which possibly shakes up the nation, and the violence which took place in Bastar did have an impact on the government. And that is a reason what possibly both the center has to be involved. But what we want to say is the general mood of the nation, what we see as the outcome of all these 4 elections is not for the Congress party, and that is exactly what we have been talking. And now once we launch Mr. Modi with his 100 days campaign for the forthcoming Lok Sabha elections, that is our testing time, and we are hopeful that
those are the crackers going off behind Mr. Rudy.
I can't hear you, or I can't speak out.
No, you can't hear us because of the crackers that are going off behind where you are. But I want Shiv Vishwanathan to explain to our viewers that if you were to extrapolate these numbers and take this to be a trend nationally, why do you believe that the BJP, which has never won a simple majority on its own, could actually end up achieving one in 2014?
Because I don't begin with the Modi wave or the Congress. I think there's a wave against the Congress. And I think if you look at it, the politics of newness affects both the Aam Aadmi Party and the Modi effect. Both of them to a certain extent are talking about the new, talking about governance, talking about some notion of a delivery system. And both parties share it. They might want to disown it, but it's there. And extrapolated, the Aam Aadmi Party is a local party. It might wish it had been national this time. But since it's only a local blip in what is the national scene, the national scene belongs to Modi.
The national scene, you're saying, belongs to Modi, and that is something which even Modi's worst critics can't take away from him now.
Well, let me put it this, even Modi cannot take it away from him.
Modi would love to give it to himself, but then yes,
well, let me put it this way. What you have at the moment is a vast amount of anger at the system, a huge amount of disappointment. We are a country where for the last 15 to 20 years, people have seen their standards of living go up. They believe that things will get better. Over the last 3 or 4 years, things have not got better. They are now convinced that under this government, they will not get better. They are also convinced that not only will there be an economic drop, there is no governance, there is no law and order. Things like the Delhi rape case, for instance, make a huge difference to the Indian psyche. Anybody who comes in there, picks up that protest vote, says, I will deliver governance, I will deliver an alternative to corruption, I will deliver economic growth, is going to win. The Congress had an opportunity to get its act together, maybe to set up Rahul Gandhi as an alternative model of development, an alternative to the tired old men of this cabinet, is screw that up completely. So if the Congress is not going to present any kind of alternative, anybody who's out there will get it. And if Modi is the candidate, yes, he will get it.
Will there be churn within the Congress? Will there be demands that Manmohan Singh should step down and someone else should be brought in so they can hit 2014 with a clean face, fresh face?
Well, you know, of course they're going to try and blame him, because you can't blame the Gandhi family in the Congress party. That's one of the unwritten rules. So, you know, he will get the blame for it. But, you know, there are 3 months left to the general election. So it doesn't make any sense. But there's something I want to say about the Modi factor. You see, he changed the conversation, which is something we haven't brought up. He's the one who dictated the agenda. And the Congress could not respond, because he started saying the rupee is in the ICU. He brought in the economic factors. Now, you know, Surjit is a proper economist. I'm not. But when the rupee comes down by half and when the growth rate halves, the first people to feel it are the villagers. Because you see, for them, that investment, that possibility of jobs, that going to the city stops. And they really feel it. And the Congress responded by giving them freebies, instead of saying, okay,
is this a larger rejection, Rajiv Rudy, of the Congress's welfare agenda? Most importantly, the results in Rajasthan, the fact that Dolonomics has failed as spectacularly. Do you think that is in some senses an endorsement of Modi's pro-development, pro-growth agenda?
Well, any election cannot be singled out to one single factor. It's a recipe of all what what prevails at the national level and what the states are doing, and especially when there are state elections which are being held. So I don't think it cannot be limited to one aspect. But of course, the people of this country do look up to Narendra Modi as a symbol of governance, as a symbol of integrity, as a symbol of delivery, as a symbol of a strong leadership and a nationalism. So all these, and they believe that Mr. Modi coming to the center would be in a position to give a government which can deliver, which can take control of the economic slide which has taken place in this country, international relations with China, with Pakistan. So there is a general perception and a belief that a strong leadership, and which possibly they have not witnessed in the Congress party for last 10 years, be it Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi or Manmohan Singh. So that lapse possibly has come to an advantage to Mr. Modi, and Mr. Modi will take over the reins of the BJP as a prime ministerial candidate and conduct the election campaign. And even if you recall, in the state elections in Delhi, the Aam Aadmi Party showed that they would do well in the state assembly elections, but when their voters were asked what they would like to do in the parliament, and all the Aam Aadmi supporters, majority...
Mr. Rudy, that's what you'd like to hope for, that the Aam Aadmi Party voters will support you, but the reality is there's still 3 or 4 months to go before the general elections, and who knows what sort of a challenge Arvind Kejriwal can put up. I have this image which has just been put up on social media. If our producers can zoom into this, this is Arvind Kejriwal sitting in the party's Connaught Place office. They're sitting on the ground and they're looking at television screens for the verdict, and this Veer Sangvi, just shows how different they are from the whole lot. The entire political committee is together at their office. They've all got screens in front. They're just like anybody watching this broadcast, which gives them this certain sense of endearment, which makes people feel, hey, this could be any one of us.
Well, a certain sense of poignancy also, because they're watching news channels, and in many ways, they are the political party the news channels created. If there were no news channels, there would be no...
And then news channels that way can create very powerful parties, yes. Shiv Vishwanathan, sociologically.
But there has to be a ritual of gratitude. You may not get it.
No, absolutely not. In fact, we've seen completely the opposite, if at all. Surjit Bhalla wants to come in and make a point.
No, a couple of things. One, on the point about whether this is a pan-India moment or not a pan-India moment. Look, Chhattisgarh, let us give Chhattisgarh to the Congress. That's an upset for various reasons. But even if the BJP loses Chhattisgarh, Chhattisgarh is almost the same size in terms of Lok Sabha seats as Delhi. Chhattisgarh has 11, Delhi has 7.
Correct.
So if we take a population-weighted average, this is a resounding defeat. And I want to come back to what Veer said, that look, the world has changed. And India has changed, especially in the last 25 years. We are in a world of rising expectations and aspirations. And when they get violated, and this is the first election they've got violated in, the people will respond. So it is no longer that you can do whatever you want and basically people will vote for you because of secularism.
No, but just look at it for a moment that the BJP is at 34 seats in leads in Delhi, which means they will form the next government. And Rajiv Rudy, as the leader of the opposition, you won't have Sheila Dikshit. Instead, you will have a belligerent, mercurial Moses wanting to guide his people, wanting to guide the people of India, and that will be very, very difficult for Harshvardhan to deal with. Those, of course, are pictures from Nitin Gadkari, a very relieved man. He's the man who took the decision to project Harshvardhan ahead of Vijay Goyal. The swords would have been out for him if he'd failed. Now, of course, there's a lot of excitement at his residence and people are celebrating. But Rajiv Rudy, your thoughts on this? This is, of course, going to be a big challenge for Harshvardhan to deal with.
No, I don't think so. You see, BJP is a tested party and we have been there in the politics.
Move away from the cliches. Mr. Rudy, move away from the cliches.
No, what I want,
Rajiv Rudy, the reality is Arvind Kejriwal will be standing and dancing on Kejriwal's, on Harshvardhan's head. That's the reality. Whoa, he'll have a broom, says Taveen Singh. This is very, very different from any normal assembly. Look at their supporters, they're dancing on the screens. You don't know what Harshvardhan's walked into just now.
Just like to say one thing. The Aam Aadmi Party has got several MLAs now. We'll all watch their performance, and no sooner they come into actual politics, we'll see how they behave and how they perform. So we also have to watch. They are not tested. At least BJP has been tested over.
No, I have a counter on this. Shiv Vishwanathan. He says when they come into assembly, they'll behave differently. But that would have been if they'd formed the government. Not having formed the government, they will continue with their moral grandstanding.
In fact, the metaphor is very clear. You know, Harshvardhan thinks he eradicated the Congress drop by drop like a polio eradication program. He doesn't know how to fleece the clean broom. That's going to be a sweep.
Yeah.
So there are two kinds of hygiene being played out, and I'm afraid Vardhan is in for surprises because it's very clear that the Aam Aadmi Party is going to continue as opposition in resistance.